Hello there. This is Group 8, Denise, Whitney, and Travis. We are here to present concerning the Flint water crisis as a demonstration of how environmental injustice affects communities. So I will begin with the overview of this issue. So water is an essential resource for human life. Although quality of water is generally not a concern for the majority of Americans, this has not been the experience of those devastated by the Flint water crisis in Michigan. As a birthplace of General Motors, Flint, Michigan was once a flourishing Midwestern town housing nearly 200,000 individuals in the mid-20th century. However, Flint's prosperity began to decline in the 1980s due to the economic destruction of the American automobile industry. Under 100,000 individuals currently inhabit Flint. 45% of the population live under the poverty line and are people of color in majority. Moreover, approximately 1 in 6 of Flint's homes are abandoned. So in 2011, Flint fell under state control as a result of shouldering a $25 million deficit. Rick Snyder, the Michigan governor at the time, assigned an emergency manager who was not elected by the city inhabitants to supervise spending and cut cost. So in 2013, under this governance, the decision to switch Flint's drinking water supply from Detroit to the Flint River, which was notoriously corrosive, was made. As a result of poor testing and inadequate treatment of the supply, lead-contaminated water found its way into thousands of Flint residents' homes. Although Flint inhabitants voiced their concerns about the water looking, tasting, and smelling foul, governor officials maintained that it was safe. However, a year later, researchers at Virginia Tech found that at least 17% of water samples indicated federal action level of lead. Concerningly, a Flint pediatrician found that approximately 9,000 children were provided lead-contaminated water for over 18 months and reports that lead is one of the most damning things you can do to a child in their entire life course trajectory. Lead is linked to serious health problems. Lead exposure in adults can cause heart and kidney diseases, reduce fertility, and raise blood pressure. Moreover, lead exposure within children and fetuses can reduce IQ, stump growth, cause hearing impairments, heart disease, and behavioral issues. Furthermore, Flint's water supply was afflicted by more than just lead. Fecal bacteria was found in the water in 2014, an indicator of insufficient levels of chlorine. Corrective action was eventually performed. However, this created another issue as the water became too chlorine rich and individuals were found to have elevated levels of trihalomethanes, which is a cancer-causing chemical. Met with consistent resistance from governing officials, Flint residents rallied to petition the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, in hopes of inciting emergency care. However, the EPA did not act. Therefore, the community came together and continued their efforts. In 2016, coalitions united and sued the city and state officials in an attempt to guarantee safe drinking water for residents. As a result, a federal judge granted Flint communities with a bottled water delivery service in November 2016. Moreover, in 2017, a major settlement enacted that the city replaced thousands of lead pipes within the water supply and many other resources to remedy the devastation. Although evidence is mounting that the water supply is improving within Flint, continued efforts are required to sustain changes. Some residents are still receiving lead-contaminated water. However, it is below federal risk concern. However, the EPA maintains that there is no safe level of lead within water. So investigations continue to determine the criminality of the water crisis. Nick Lyons, the director of Michigan Health and Human Services during the crisis, was charged with 9 counts of manslaughter as a result of deaths linked to the water supply. and this was determined in 2020. Furthermore, many other officials, including the state's chief medical executive, have been charged for tampering with lead results. The Flint water crisis is a story of injustice and poor governance. Investigations conducted by the Michigan Civil Rights Commission have revealed that systemic racism is responsible for the neglectful responses from its state governance. Reviewing the literature demonstrated how the recurring trend of unsafe drinking water and the impact minority communities, coupled with the institutional implosion, qualifies the crisis as an issue of environmental injustice. Furthermore, Inwood et al. 2018 theorizes that the crisis was exacerbated by white supremacy, as the political geographies of the tragedy and the construction of white innocence were sources of corruption. Moreover, numerous studies have highlighted the negative psychological effects induced by the crisis, including anxiety and depression, perpetuated by decreased trust in health public officials, financial distress, and more. However, a record of the resiliency of the community is also prevalent within that literature. Sobek et al. 2020 affirm that although the crisis produced immense stress within Flint, it also galvanized community competence to engage in solution-focused coping and other adaptive capacities.
With the government's lack of response to the city's water crisis, Flint's residents came together to demand change and force the government to do its job. As mentioned before, the EPA and state officials previously failed to act after the initial petitions. Residents and other advocacy groups, including the ACLU, which is the American Civil Liberties Union, the NRDS, which is the National Resources Defense Council, and Concerned Pastors for Social Change, sued city and state officials to guarantee safe drinking water for Flint residents. Since this time, the city has received $100 million in federal funds from the EPA and an additional $20 million match from the state of Michigan. While it has taken years to propose and receive approval to begin making the necessary changes, here are some of the attempts that have been made to address the contaminated water crisis. In November of 2016, a federal judge ordered door-to-door delivery of bottled water to every home without properly installed and maintained faucet filters. In March of 2017, a settlement was reached which required replacement of the city's lead pipes, further funding for tap water testing, faucet filter installation and education, free bottled water through summer 2018, and continued health programs to mediate residual effects of the tainted water. Currently, there are 8 scheduled infrastructure improvement projects. 5 are scheduled for completion in 2021, 2 for 2022, and 1 project completion date is still yet to be determined. These 8 projects include water quality monitoring, creating a secondary water source, residential service line replacement, construction of chemical feed plants, or construction of a chemical feed plant, water meter upgrades, Dort and Cedar reservoirs, water main replacements, and local assistance and capacity developments. To give a little more background, the water quality monitoring is 6 quality monitoring stations that were completed this year, which provide ongoing assessments of the water quality of Flint's municipal water systems, which is in addition to the lead and copper monitoring required by the Clean Water Act. Creating a secondary water source is a project that's scheduled for completion this summer with ongoing improvements through 2022 and creates a secondary water source in case of emergency. There will be approximately 7 miles of pipe connecting Flint's existing water structure to the Genesee County Drain Commission for emergency backup. Residential service line replacement is a project scheduled for completion in the summer or fall of this year. And this will replace all of the lead and galvanized steel residential water lines. As of April of this year, 26,000 excavations had been completed, and 9,900 lines have been replaced. 500 homes were still waiting excavation in April. While the excavation and pipe replacement is at no cost to the residents do have to provide permission for the work to be completed, and there is still a deadline to sign up for participation. As you may be able to tell, that can be an issue for people who do not have the resources to get online or to sign up for these services for the excavation and for the work to be completed. The construction of a chemical feed plant is a building to ensure that water is treated safely and effectively, and that is scheduled for completion in fall of 2021. The water meter upgrades are for household water meters, which will allow residents to be billed for actual water usage rather than paying estimated prices, which has been occurring due to outdated and malfunctioning technology of the water meters. The water meter upgrades are scheduled for completion in 2022. The Dorton Cedar reservoirs are reservoirs that hold 20 million gallons of water each and will be rehabilitated to reserve additional water for emergency purposes for the city. The Dort Reservoir is being completed first and scheduled for completion in 2022, and then the Cedar Reservoir will follow. The water main replacement project is scheduled for completion. That completion date is to be determined, I'm sorry. And that will replace some of the main water lines that transport water throughout the city of Flint. Local assistance and capacity development provides funding for personnel and for expertise throughout the project and construction processes.
According to Baum et al. In 2016, approximately 50% of Americans are not comfortable with water safety. Potential solutions will require a combination of education, activism, and legal action. By identifying a problem and working together, multiple microsystems, educational or activist, begin to impact meso and macro systems, local and federal policy change. Flint's water crisis came to light because of strong research partnerships between activists, academics, and other specialists, according to Lewis and Sadler, 2021. As these groups and systems merge resources, a true systems lens begins to take shape. While defining systems theory, Walsh, 2010, identifies that all parts of the system are interconnected, and changes in one part will influence the functioning of all other parts. A system lens allows the crisis to be viewed from an individual, local, and federal perspective. While discussing potential solutions through a systematic perspective, Michalakis and Shermer, 2014, state that general lines of actions, what ought to be done, and responsibilities, who should do it, are constructed. Local and federal policy change can be made through legal representation and action. Lawsuits can both raise awareness and actualize progressive change. Not only can this impact improve the system for many, but smaller systems, families, can also be impacted directly. Flint residents are attempting to seek compensation and justice through the court system, according to Gost in 2016. Education and exposure through social media can lead to engagement and activism, which can create motivation for large-scale system reform. By looking more closely at these interrelated systems, we can gain insight into the scope of the crisis and the necessities for potential solutions. Expanding awareness through a systems perspective can help increase calls to action. Theories are broad statements that provide a lens by which to ground approaches for studying implementation, according to Dan Schroeder, 2019. Combining theory into action can create the framework for understanding how each system continues to affect the other. While looking at implications for social work practice, social work builds its identity on social problems. Again, this is according to Michalakis and Shermer, 2014. As social workers, we must first and foremost clearly and articulately present the issue at hand, identify and propose solutions, rally resources, and engage action. When working with residents, lawmakers, activists, and court personnel, these social systems consist of communication because that is what is going on between persons. This is according to Killstrom, 2011. In addition to communication and messaging, connecting research-based systems into action-oriented systems will be necessary for our profession moving forward. Bridging the gap between research and practice is a critical frontier for the future of social work, according to Cabasa 2016. It is imperative that we continue to learn as a social work system, but also want to understand the need for transforming theory and research into practical action. While incorporating the necessary change components, we as professionals will be required to adapt our professional system as a whole. As we learn from both progress and setbacks, evolving our professional duties will be managed. Experienced implementation teams can help focus attention, anticipate common issues, and avoid wasting time and effort, according to Fixing Us All 2015. The more we learn and do, the more experience and perspective we gain, the more we develop as a profession and system.
And here are our references. We hope that you enjoyed our presentation. We look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.